everybody. Happy Sunday. This is our next Sunday devotional. This is the series that we have been doing since church was canceled, the start of COVID, to try to give something uplifting each week to help us and everybody get through this crazy experience. And today we are talking about a movie. So this is fun.
Yeah. Well, we talk about movies on our channel, so it seems
Yeah.
right in a Sunday devotional to go back to another movie.
Yeah. We've done this once before with All Saints, which is probably maybe the strongest faith-based film I've ever seen. So here we're talking about a different one, maybe not quite as strong, but still pretty strong. We're going to talk about I Can Only Imagine. And this is after our big live episode on Toxic Fandom last
Yeah.
week. That was a really cool experience. And now we're back doing our regular episode. So
Yep. And that was a lot of fun doing that. So
Yeah.
that was really cool to do the special Sunday devotional as a part of that really cool thing you were doing.
yeah, it was the guy at film, it was the guy at the movies virtual film festival. I was really excited to be a part of it, and Joe did a great job with that. And so yeah, it was fun. But now we're back, and so this movie, it was directed by the Erwin brothers, who've done a bunch of other faith-based films. And I think it's not without its flaws, but I think that it is definitely one of the stronger faith-based films that I've seen. And you had a chance just to watch it just this morning for the first time.
Yeah.
And so
I'm really fresh on it. So we're going to go into this and it's all fresh in my head.
So yeah, what was your overall thoughts about it overall?
My overall, like the big thought that went through my
Yeah.
head was surprised because,
Mhm.
I mean, like you said, it's not without its flaws, but right now it's not the flaws I'm thinking about because I feel like this movie just did a good job authentically telling this story.
Yeah.
And instead of taking a moment to preach us a sermon and remind us of the importance of forgiveness, which so many Christian movies do, they pause what they're doing. Like, did you get that? Did you get the symbolism?
Yeah.
Okay, let's make sure you get it and preach a sermon in this expositional scene. And this movie didn't do that. It told us the story. And so we saw what Bart Millard was going through. And Dennis Quaid had a great performance. Like, I think all the actors did a great job. And so because it just authentically told us this story, we got the message loud and clear.
Yes, I agree. And so you worked in Christian radio for many, many years.
14 years.
So how big was this song in the world of Christian radio?
It was
I
big.
can only imagine.
I mean, the first station I worked at, and I was 17 when I started in Christian radio, and I think that was probably around the time the song started to take off a little bit. I was working at a Christian hard rock station. So like, the screaming over the music type stuff. But I do remember that this song, I mean, it broke barriers and was played on secular radio. It wasn't just a Christian hit. It was a truly, completely Christian song that crossed over to secular radio.
Yeah.
And a lot of times Christian hard rock bands are able to do that just because of the sound. But to have a song that is purely Christian and purely Christian lyrics transcend and go to secular radio is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the first time I heard it was on Top 40 radio. Just regular radio. I heard it, and back when I used to listen to the radio.
Yes.
And this song was huge, and I think rightfully so, because it is a great song.
Oh,
I mean, this just if you're talking about song crafting and crafting a pop hit song with a great hook in a chorus, this completely does that. It is so effective in drawing you in and having that, like they call it, an effective hook for this type of song. It's very well done.
And I think part of what's so effective about it is just like the song is I Can Only Imagine, it does that. So like for me, for instance, like I said, when I started in Christian radio, it was a hard rock station. And so I was loving bands like Demon Hunter, Project 86, Skillet, hard rock bands. And I still love all of those bands. And if I had to pick music, that's still my favorite type of music. But that song transcended that barrier for me because of the words, because of how those words were sung. and how they really do hit your imagination. What will it be like when I see heaven for the first time? What will it be like when I'm standing in his presence? And it's kind of one of those things, and this is just me. If you're afraid of the idea of death, you're afraid of what is over there on the other side, it's one of those songs that's like, well, if you know Jesus, this song reminds you there's nothing to be afraid of with that. I mean, what will I do when I stand in front of him? Will I just be in utter awe, or will I be dancing? And it's just the way it touches your imagination like that, it kind of removes that element of fear.
Yeah, it's really strong thematically, like you're saying, but also just the way the music is written. So
Yeah.
by the time it gets to the surrounded by your glory, what will my heart think? That you're completely invested. It builds up to that climax so effectively.
Yeah.
And so I think part of the reason why this movie works is that this song is so good.
Yes. And the
And
other reason I think this movie works, like I said earlier, it was authentic, which is the theme of the movie. So Bart Millard, abused by his dad, hates his dad, leaves, and he pictures his dad as a monster. And he leaves and he meets the rest of the band members of Mercy Me, and they start this Christian band. And I think what really spoke to me about this is the fact that he was good and he was talented. And they showed us that. Like we saw him do that school play and all this stuff. What a natural gift he had. What a natural gift he had in his band. But like I can't even remember the guy's name, the guy with the ponytail that helped with audio.
yeah, Trace Atkins. That's what I just
Yes.
called.
Yes. Well, here he is. And he's like, I promise I'd always be honest with you. You are a performer on stage and you have a mask on. But then every once in a while, you give us something that is genuine and you're a puzzle to me. And I'm listening to that. And that made so much sense to me that it hit me in this deep place. And I'm like, oh, I totally get this. He's afraid to tap into that authentic part, and he just wants to give a very good performance. And yet the very thing that's going to make his performance truly good is when he puts away the mask and truly hits that genuine part of him.
Yeah.
And he had to, face his father to get to that point. He had to face that thing that he hated most and that he was most afraid of. And then he saw the gospel had transformed his father. But I'm looking at that, I'm like, this is a picture of why most Christian movies don't work, right? Because, like I said, many Christian movies have to stop and go, wink, wink, did you see what we just did there? And if you didn't get it, let us give you, in other words, it's not being authentic. It's afraid to hit that true authentic point because it's afraid you're going to miss the gospel. It's afraid of the imperfections in that authenticity. And that struck me, and I think that's why I got the feels watching this movie, because I sit in front of a camera and I talk and I go, how often do I put on a mask? I don't intend to, but how often do I do that? And it's one of those things that I go, wow, is that what I wrestle with sometimes when I'm in front of the camera? That there's something genuine in me wrestling to overcome a mask that I'm trying to put on because I just want it to look good. And I'm afraid of the imperfections of that authenticity.
Yeah. And afraid to show corruptibility,
Yeah.
afraid to show flaws. And the thing I think that makes this movie work, aside from being a great song, is the fact that it's just telling one man's story, one man's journey. It's not trying to be a ministry tool. And I mean, those can be great for Sunday school and be effective. I've used those kind of videos and as a missionary and as a teacher and a church, and that can be great. That's fine. But as far as making a movie, if you want to make a movie, I don't think that's the way to go. Maybe I just haven't been convinced yet. Maybe it's possible. I don't know. But I think that the way to make a movie work is you need to tell, even if it is about a greater congregation, say in All Saints, there's about this congregation, that they still focus on a smaller story. And I think that here we're just learning about Bart and his story.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it works better than something like War Room, for instance, which is a ministry movie. And again, I think that's fine for Sunday school. I don't think it makes for a very good movie.
And it's
And
funny because
so,
the brothers that did War Room, I think I've seen all the movies that they've done. And
yeah,
they are hit and miss for me. And I think it's because of that. Like War Room, I agree with you. And I'm trying to think. Oh, they did that movie Fireproof. And I thought
yeah, the
that one was
Kendrick brothers.
yeah, the Kendrick brothers. Thank you. I was forgetting their name. And I think that one stood out to me more because I was engaged and getting married when that movie came out. And the pre-counseling we did was terrible. And that movie dealt with issues that weren't being dealt with in my wife and I's pre-marriage counseling. And so I looked at that and I said, well, that's well better made. But it was telling the story of this broken marriage and this
Mm-hmm.
guy's ability to try to fix that. And so yeah, I totally agree with you. If we could quit preaching, because that's not what a movie's for. A movie is to tell a story
Right.
and let the story speak to our hearts. And I think that to me is where this movie excelled.
Yeah,
Focused on Bart Millard and just told us his story. And by the way, I got the message.
exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it starts out with him as a kid, and we see that not only is his dad very abusive, and I mean, he says that that his dad that that he you said that he saw his dad as a monster. I think that his dad was a monster,
Yeah.
was a legitimate, he should be in jail for
Mm-hmm.
doing what he's doing. And so he was a very bad man, and he is sent off to camp, and he learns the value of journals and writing down his prayers and his problems and his dreams in the journal. He also meets this girl, Shannon, and they become friends. And when he gets home, his mom is left. And that's pretty devastating. I mean, not only to have your mom leave, but know that you're going to be alone with this horrible person. Uh, that so it's like a double whammy there.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
brutal. I mean, it's her mom, his mom. I mean, he must have had to go through some forgiveness process with her as well.
And according to the end of the movie, because you know how they do that where are they at
Yeah.
now at the end of the movie, had the picture of the real Bart Millard with his real mother, and then it had that caption saying that, they'd been becoming friends, since
Mm-hmm.
the release of that hit, and she's like his number one fan. And you can bet that he did have to go through some forgiveness with her as well, because I think they did a good job establishing he had a good connection with her.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that part of his story, that she had left them and, he was left alone with his father. And so when he came home from camp and she was gone, like, it was one of those, what? Like, I mean, that was my reaction
It
as
was
soon as I
shocking.
saw that in the movie. I was like, no, she didn't seem like that. Seriously? So I can't imagine I can only imagine. I can't imagine, like, what he felt in that moment and the stuff that he had to work through. And yet the other message in that movie is look at how the gospel changed his dad. His dad was a monster. And by the end of the movie, he wasn't, because Jesus transformed him from the inside out. And it's just the power of that change that could happen. And yet how hard it can be when you're the one wounded to let that change happen. Like forgiving his dad was not an easy thing for him, but it happened. And I can't imagine what that's like for his mom and how much forgiveness he had to walk through.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been a struggle. And I like the fact this movie doesn't try to pretend like that's not hard.
Yes.
That it is hard. And basically, like, his father is obsessed with his glory days of high school, and he feels like life let him down, that dreams were a lie. He's very, very bitter about it.
Yeah.
And so then once he gets into high school, and this is the main flaw of this film, is they should not have had the same actor playing him in high school. That was a terrible choice.
They tried to cover it. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Where somebody yells, "Hey Bart, you look 35 with that beard." And I just sat on the couch and laughed. I said, "He is 35. You can't fix it with a self-aware joke."
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it looks ridiculous. It looks even kind of creepy that he's with this younger actress, and the whole
Yep.
thing is just, it was so stupid, and it was not necessary. They should have had another actor play him in high school. Like, there's no
Yeah.
reason to have it be the same person.
Yep. Though
And
I will say after high school, so he gets on the motorcycle and he rides off. I know it said 6 months later, and then he met the band in Oklahoma City.
yeah,
But I had a hard time following how much time was passing and like how much time he was with the band before he
I
went back
know.
home. And I couldn't tell if I missed a line somewhere that explained it, or if I had just looked down at my phone or something for a second and totally missed it. I'm like, I just couldn't tell. And I was like, how much time has passed? It's like,
Yeah.
seriously. And so I kind of struggled with that. So on the one hand, I guess it worked that it was the same actor, other than it looking totally creepy. But yeah, I guess I feel like that's what they should have done, is helped us with that passage of time. How long did he travel in that bus with Mercy Me? One line he wrote
Yeah.
to that guy with the ponytail for like 2 years every week or something, and that's about all I got.
Yeah, that's true. I think there is a little bit of a meshing of timelines here
Yeah.
going on, and the it's just ridiculous. Takes you out of the movie. Even though the actor J. Michael Finley, he plays Jean Valjean on Broadway. He has a really nice voice, and so him singing Oklahoma was nice, and
Yep.
and he didn't tell his dad about being in Oklahoma, and because he's figured his dad would just make fun of him. And we get our Priscilla Shire cameo here
Yes.
as the drama teacher. And I don't know why they feel a need to have her in every movie, but these Christian movies. Um,
Yeah. I gotta
but
imagine it's a tight-knit group when you're in the Christian film industry, everybody bonding over why does nobody watch our movies? And in that little circle you pull from the actors, I guess. I don't know.
she's much better in this than she is in another Kendrick film, um, or another Irwin film, the Overcomer, which I was not a big fan of. There's a scene in that movie where a girl asks her for help in her prayer, and so then she literally tells the girl what to pray. She says,
Yeah.
"Here's the words," and
I'm trying to remember if I've
and then she
seen
says,
Overcomer.
and
That's
then
the one
after
where they race, right?
after the prayer, she says, "That was such a beautiful prayer." I was like, "Lady, you just told her the prayer," and so funny.
Yep.
Anyway, she's not the best actress in the world, but she's serviceable for this small part. But I don't think we need to include her in every movie.
Right. But I mean, like you said, she did good in this. She felt like,
She's fine.
those drama teachers and music teachers that I had in high school. So it worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah. We find out that his dad has cancer. And this is right around when Bart starts going to church, becoming more of a Christian. And and you're right, he kind of volunteers to be in the band. And how old is he in this, and what's going on? And he talks about the songs that he held on to, the songs that gave him hope. And I think that's something I can definitely relate to. Not that I really had any trauma as a child, but I think there are still those songs that really get you through hard times in life.
I mean, I think that's why that's a very authentic thing to say
Mhm.
from the stage, because I mean, I don't think I had much trauma in my childhood either. And nonetheless, we go through hard times, and then there's those songs that we hold on to because they get us through those times.
Yeah. And then Trace Adkins shows up, and he says that they have potential, but they haven't found their soul. But he helps them. That's when we meet Michael W. Smith, which ironically was the first concert I ever went to was Michael W.
Oh,
Smith.
nice.
And that was one of my friends this was when I was in middle school. That one of my friends was a big fan, and so we went and saw Michael W. Smith, and it was pretty fun.
Yes.
Pretty good.
I don't think I've ever been to a Michael W. Smith concert. But in my years of Christian radio, I got to meet him for a few seconds once. And his eyes freaked me out. They were like so blue. And it's just like, I was like shaking his hand. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you looking into my soul?
And I wouldn't be able to tell you how good the Michael W. Smith look-alike was in this, because it's been so long since I went to that concert. But the Amy Grant look-alike, I thought was so good. I really would have thought it was her. I mean, she looked exactly like her.
I mean, I gotta be honest, I didn't listen to a lot of Amy Grant, but I'm very familiar with Amy Grant, and you said that in the notes to me. And so when she popped up on screen, I'm looking up pictures of her on Google. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, they did a really good job casting, because this looks like Amy Grant. Way better than the Jeremy Camp and the Jeremy Camp movie.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like if they ever want to make an Amy Grant biopic, Nicole DePort, call her up, because she looks exactly like her.
Yes.
I was actually a huge Amy Grant fan growing up. She is somebody that my mom and I had very different tastes on a lot of things, but she was one of those sort of she was a peacemaker musician that we could both agree on, that we both liked. And so that was the reason why I especially liked her. And anyway, so yeah, they go back and forth for a little while, trying to make it and playing music. And he says, stop running from it. Let that pain become your inspiration. And so then he goes back home.
Actually, real quick, that was probably my favorite scene, because when he went out to, get from the record reps their thoughts, he thought he did such a great job on stage. And I think truthfully, he technically did do a great job, but they noticed it wasn't super genuine. And when they gave him that feedback, those cuts to his dad, your dreams will never work for you. They'll fail you. You're going to be like me. And then when that one rep was like, dude, you have to face reality, that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I think that's where the movie did a good job. Because his dad was a monster, and you felt that. And then here he is trying to pursue his dreams, and these Christian artists, these Christian record reps, are saying the same stuff to him his dad said. And so that trigger, I thought, was well done in this movie. When you hear the rep cut to Dennis Quaid, and then cut back to the rep, cut to Dennis Quaid saying the same things. And it's like, oh, I get it. And when he went backstage saying, I quit, and he's like, I'm just so tired, I kind of went, oh, yeah. Why am I so familiar with that feeling? I get that.
And you can really feel the weight of this burden weighing him down. And he says that my dad, he beat me, and I carry that. And you can feel it. And I think that all of us can relate to that for one thing or another, whether it's something silly that we shouldn't be carrying, but we're still carrying it.
Yeah.
And
well, it's funny because I'm watching this and I'm asking myself, what am I carrying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was that well done.
And I think that's why this movie can work for people that aren't even religious at all, because everybody has to forgive, whether you're religious or not. You have to let go. You have to forgive people that have hurt you. And my friend David, who does the monthly the movie previews with me and recaps, he really enjoyed this movie, and I don't think he's particularly religious, and because of that theme to it of forgiveness and love. And so I think that that's another thing that makes it work, is it has more universal themes than something like in God's Not Dead, when the the professor, which I like that movie more than most, but
Mhm.
that professor, he is hit by a car and shot down by the end,
Oh my
in
gosh.
order to remove the evil from him or whatever, and give him a second chance. And it doesn't have that authenticity that anybody can relate to that experience.
Yeah, and it was a hit and
Right.
run from Superman, Dean Cain. So,
Right.
I found that totally unrelatable on every level there. I was like,
That's right.
no.
So he goes back home and he sees his dad. His father has cancer, and he says that he says that if God can forgive everyone else, why can't he forgive me? And he says to his dad, God can forgive you, I can't.
Yeah.
Which again, I think all of us have kind of been there, where it just feels too hard. It feels too hard. And he gets a chance to actually beat his dad at a point, and his dad says, just do it, just get your revenge. And he doesn't do that, of course.
Yeah.
But it's not until he hears Amazing Grace that he's able to kind of feel the Spirit, and
Yeah.
start the forgiveness process with his dad. And I think that uh, that Amazing Grace is one of those songs too that transcends any particular genre or hymn, as opposed to other hymns. Amazing Grace is one of those ones that that I think almost everybody will acknowledge is just beautiful, and it's true. It has a truth to it. It's a great song.
Yeah. And I think in these scenes, one of the things that was really powerful for me, and what I love about the movie, is it didn't stop and preach here.
Mm-hmm.
But what was amazing was the revelation that that very Sunday morning when Dennis Quaid had that plate of breakfast and smacked his son in the head with it. And his son goes to church and the blood is running down his face because he's just been smacked in the head with glass. And so you see the monster in his father. Then you find out in this scene the humanity in his father, that he tuned into the radio and listened to his son sing. And he enjoyed it so much that he listened to the sermon. And then the dad in that moment got saved. And I loved how he said that to his son. He goes, that's what saved me. But they were able to communicate that, whereas other Christian movies would be like, and this was the Lord God, and how the Lord God used this moment and hooked him. And
Yeah.
instead of preaching it, they showed it. And I, as the viewer with an intelligent brain, was able to go, that's how God reached him. He listened to his son, it got through to his heart, and then he started, and his whole life was transformed. And here his son didn't even realize it, how
Mm-hmm.
much God used Bart in bringing his father to salvation. I
Yeah.
love those moments in the movie.
It's true, because that is a shocking moment when he breaks the dish over his son. At the beginning, we didn't really talk about that in particular, but yeah, it's a shocking moment. And so, later on, when you see him trying to cook for his son and trying to, you see him trying to change. I think we as an audience sort of aren't really trusting of it at first too. And
Yeah.
then we're like, I don't know. And I think that maybe says something to Dennis Quaid's performance, which is, I think, really good in this role. And that both him and his father are both changed by music, and then the music leading to God's truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a powerful picture. And I love that the movie didn't preach at us in that moment. It just told us the
Just,
story.
yeah, exactly.
And as
Yeah.
the story played out, you see, like when Jesus told parables, that's what you see. Like the
Mm-hmm.
parable of, I forgot what I was going to say. Point is when Jesus told a parable, all he told was the story. And the story carries with it that power. And that's what
Yeah.
we're seeing. We're not getting a sermon, we're watching a movie. And yet the story that it's conveying is showing us lives transforming. And I think that's a powerful message, because here was this dad who was an abuser, who was a monster. And that's how much bigger God is, that God transformed him into something new. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that, where Bart found his old journals and he drew that new picture of a wounded monster. And there he was as a kid sitting by the wounded monster, helping to take care of it. And to me, just that by itself was an incredibly emotional, powerful image.
Yeah, it really is. It was a very good job. And I think also I appreciate the fact that they didn't do any cheap sort of references to the song earlier in the
Yeah.
movie. You know what I mean? Like they could have had throughout the movie about Imagine or other lines and how they were all leading up to this big moment or whatever. That that would have been lame. I like
Yeah.
the fact that they just kind of left it that his life all kind of led up to this moment. And yes, he has the journals, and his dad says, "I told you not to follow your dreams, but that was only because mine never came true." And he says, "But you are not like me. You have a real gift." And so then he writes the song, and he says, my old man was a monster, and I saw God transform him. I didn't think God could do that." Which I think is that we sometimes don't really believe that that's possible. It seems impossible.
Yeah. But
It feels
that's what Gabriel said to Mary. What's impossible for man is
yes,
possible for God.
it's a good
And I
example.
think Jesus said the same thing to the disciples, when they said, well, how can we be saved? And
Yeah,
Jesus said, well, for you, that is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. And again, the movie didn't have to reference any of those verses. It didn't
right.
have to. It showed us. It,
Yeah.
it, it showed us that. And I'm going to skip to the end for just a second. But when he debuts that song, and in his mind's eye, he looks out into the crowd and there's nobody but his dad. We have a picture of him no longer seeing his dad as a monster anymore, because nothing is impossible for God. And there he saw his dad as God had created him in that crowd. And that's what was so powerful about it. His journey to authenticity, in a sense, was his faith journey of realizing nothing is impossible for God. God could take the monster of his life and transform him into a man. And God could take the pain of his life and transform it into beauty.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's really moving, and you got to give Amy Grant huge props. The fact that
Oh, yeah.
she would let him sing the song, and this could have been a huge hit for her. So yeah, all praise Amy Grant. Way to go.
Actually, what's so cool, okay, so Christian radio, I know it's Bart Millard. I know it's Mercy Me song. Here we are in that scene, and the notes are singing. I'm like, no, Amy, I love you, but don't do it. Don't do it, Amy. And she opens her mouth to sing. I'm like, no, and she doesn't sing. And I'm like, oh, okay, thank God. And my wife Laura is right next to me, and I'm like, I know Bart Millard sings the song, but I am on the edge of my seat right now. And like twice she starts to sing it. And it's funny because as a creative with a relationship with God, sometimes you hit those blocks and you don't understand, why am I blocked? I have talent. You've given me this talent. Why in this moment am I blocked? And I was dealing with that actually with my Mulan review that I just did. I was dealing with that with a review that I did before that, where it's like there's something here, and I'm in the stranglehold of a creative block. Why can't I get out of this block? And it took her stepping aside, because it turned out it was the Holy Spirit. And again, the movie's not telling you this. It's not preaching at you. The Holy Spirit spoke unto her. But it's like you as the viewer get to watch this and see it through the performance, that the Holy Spirit was saying, step aside, give it back to Bart. And that step of faith was an incredible thing. And Bart got to be the one to share that song. And it's like, as a creative myself, watching her go through that, I'm feeling the familiarity of that block and going, okay, God, how long do I wrestle with you before I finally stop and go, what are you trying to tell me to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that she was willing to be so unselfish.
Yes. And I've
That
worked in the Christian industry, and I say this in all respect. The Christian industry can be as selfish as the secular industry
mhm.
because it's all humans. It's all people. Even people who want to serve God are not perfect. And so, having been behind the scenes and seen a little bit behind the curtain, it's there. And to see Amy Grant, this was all set. All the contracts were done. She didn't have to do this. Legally, there were no repercussions. And Bart Millard handed this to her, and she freely gave it back.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's a great moment, and it really builds up to this great song, and I think it pays off, and I definitely tear up at the end. I was worried that I was worried in watching it again that my response from initially watching would be that I liked it because it was so much better than the other faith-based films, a lot of the other ones I've seen. But I think that now watching it a second time, I just genuinely like it. I think it's
Yeah.
genuinely a good film, and I it's not because it's better than because sometimes that can happen. Like definitely watching Netflix films, there'll be one that's like, well, it was better than the other Netflix films.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, so your
Well,
gauge
it's
kind of
well written,
changes.
and it
But I
lets you make choices, right?
yeah,
For instance, that Amy Grant thing, I just told you what I got out of it. Like, if I was to do a theological analysis on this movie and pick on that scene, that's me. But Rachel, you could have watched that, and God could have been dealing with you with something else. And
mm,
I think that's the way a Christian movie should go.
yeah.
You need to trust, number one, the Holy Spirit to take what you're creating and speak to the audience.
Yeah.
He knows how to do that. And then you got to let your audience have their imagination when they're watching it and get the message they need to get out of that.
Well, and like I said, I think what makes it work is keeping the scope small, just
Yes.
telling one person's story, their conversion, their life story. Because even if people don't agree with your religion, they have a harder time sort of denying your life experience that this is
Yeah.
what happened to me. And so I think that that just makes it better all around.
Yeah.
And I think that particularly this song is a song that, like you said, it was more than just in the evangelical, in the Christian community, because a lot of times in the sort of Latter-day Saint Mormon community, the sort of mainstream Christian stuff has a hard time. There's sometimes not as much crossover as you'd think. And so
Hmm.
if a song kind of is able to cross over in here, I think that it's something even extra special, just has the universality that is really important. And so I think that it building up to this ending with this song and this performance, and it just makes it really pay off. It makes you happy to have listened to the song because it's such a good song, and you've just felt this whole journey with the song.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree with that. And it's hard in the Christian music industry because a lot of times all of it sounds the same. And it all sounds the same because it's what sells. And so when you get something that extraordinary and that authentic that transcends all of those barriers, it's definitely something special and unique. And so you have songs like Amazing Grace. I can only imagine that really just touch on those chords. And that's exactly what Bart Millard had to do to be authentic, just to realize that he has that pain and let God take those ashes and turn them into beauty. And God truly transformed his pain and made it into this beautiful song for his dad. And that's the incredible thing. All this time, like, his dad was a monster when he was a kid, and now he's singing a song I can only imagine because his dad is in heaven. What is he seeing? What is his experience like? I can only imagine. And it's, to me, like you said, you can't deny a life experience, and that's what helps this be transformative. Whether you are Christian or not, you can sympathize with his struggle. If you're an artist, especially a creative in some form, you can sympathize with his struggle, and you don't have to be a religious person to get it. And it's just, so that genuineness comes out in the song and it comes out in the lyrics. And that's why it was able to transcend. I laughed though, because I was a music director and I got to pick the songs that were going to be on our station. And I remember the pressure I got from my managers, the sound we're supposed to have. And so I had to be very careful what I filtered and I listened to. And once a week I was on the phone with record reps and had to find nice ways to say no to one song and yes to another song that just happens to fit our sound better. And so when I can only imagine is being sent to radio stations and it comes to one station and in the envelope it said, "I dare you to play this," I just laughed and I said, I wish it was that easy. I wish I could have gotten something that says, "I dare you to play this," and I could have just loaded that into my system. Yeah, I wish, but
not an accurate portrayal of early 2000s radio.
It could have been like that in the early 2000s. I wasn't a music director during that particular time. I was doing other things in radio at that time, but
yeah,
as a music director, and I got to pick the music that went on the station, I was just like, I wish it was that easy.
But it does work as far as just sort of building momentum and kind of in a very quick montage, sort of giving you an idea of how much a phenomenon it became.
And it was a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish I was a music director at that time because, the few years that I did it, there was not a song that was that big.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd be curious to know what that's like.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, even the fact that it became so popular here in Utah, it was a kind of a big deal because that just didn't happen very often with contemporary Christian music here. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. We had I put out on my Facebook and on Twitter a bunch of comments or a bunch of posts about it. We got some good comments that we have. Matthew David Klein, he says, "I would say that both this film and The Overcomer tank out from most faith-based films, even if Overcomer at least is not based on a true story," which I thought it kind of was, but maybe I forget. But Elise Hawks Ferris, she says, "We loved this one. I have watched many faith-based ones, and although I even own some, many are ridiculously cheesy. I thought this one was done well." Chandler Langley, he says, "It's definitely one of the best out of the industries that create Christian music. Preachy, of course. Then again, what Christian film doesn't? But it plays out better than most." And my friend Rachel Bay Buhner, she says, "I really liked it. It was so raw and real, but also the abuse was so sad and hard to watch. I think it shows what God can do for us, which is cool." And then over on Twitter, we have Ryan Cam, he says, "Very underrated movie, great singing as well." Rachel McLemore, she says, "Love this movie. My grandma and I enjoy it, but it is definitely a tearjerker." Matthew Aaron Hall, he says, "It's definitely one of the better ones. And I also liked I Still Believe from the same team, especially since I grew up with Jeremy Camp's music. So it was interesting to see a movie on him." Yeah, I'd give a positive review to I Still Believe. I think the biggest difference is that it's not as good a song is this song, in my opinion.
Yeah,
it's not as good.
Yeah,
so the payoff isn't quite as good.
One of those who's incredibly talented, and he's very authentic. So I think that's, again, part of what makes him so popular and people connect with his music. But I agree, there was something very unique about the song. I can only imagine.
Yeah. Mike Queso, "Sounds like it could make a great double feature with I Still Believe, both from the same producers." Joey's Movie Blog says, "It's one of the only ones I like as far as faith-based films." And Scott, she says, "I loved it, and even my husband enjoyed it, and he usually doesn't like faith-based films because they're too cheesy." He says, "I believe the film moved my husband. I hear him playing the song around the house sometimes." And Lane, a film nerd, says, "I too enjoy it quite a bit. That and The Case for Christ are two of the better conventional faith-based films," which is one I think maybe down the road we might consider doing. It's pretty good, I think. Case for Christ.
That'd be a good one. I've only seen it once, like its opening weekend, so I wouldn't mind watching that one again.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was, again, one that just focused on one story as opposed to a movement.
And the book is a good read.
Yeah, Jaron says, sadly, I feel like faith-based films most of the time really miss the mark, overly preachy, low budget, etc. This one, though, I loved it. I think it's one that can even appeal to bigger audiences, possibly sparking more curiosity from those not of faith. And then one last one, Vegas Puzzle Lynn says, watched this and cried, but love the song. I can only imagine it makes me cry like happy baby, like baby happy tears.
Yeah.
There we go. So yeah,
Yes.
it's a good one. Well, let us know if you're listening what you think about this movie. Maybe you think we're too easy on it. What do you think? Put in the comments, and we'd love to hear your thoughts about if it inspired you, and what you think of a song. Put in the comments. We'd love to hear that. And thanks so much, Kristen. Where can people find you?
You can find me on my channel, Durbania, and I'm the one and only with that name, so I'll pop right up as soon as you type it in. And I do movie reviews, I rank movies, and I do this thing called a theological analysis, and I just reviewed Mulan. And in that spoiler talk, I dove into some God things that I saw in that movie. So come on over and let's talk.
Great. Yeah, and you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. I've been extremely busy lately with lots of reviews, so please take a look at that. And let us know if you have any ideas for Sunday Devotional, what you'd like us to talk about. And we really appreciate all of your support. And please subscribe to the channel. Please like this video. We really appreciate that. And thanks again, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye, everyone.